Okay, cool. Just nobody had responded to anything I'd said.
Oh,
So
I hadn't heard you say anything before that.
I heard you
no,
come in, but you hadn't said anything before that.
okay.
All right.
All right. I actually need to go fill my water bottle.
Same. All right.
Okay, Halo's actually playing
Yes.
in your screen. Okay.
All right. Be right back. It goes okay, Kamizite. Kamizite, I'm gonna go get some water, and if you could stick around so that we could do some mic tests, I'd appreciate it.
Hey, Kami, how's it going?
Only if what's okay with me? I didn't see.
Oh no, I was just referring to Kami in the chat.
No, and I'm referring to Kami in the chat as well. It says only if it's okay with Baggins. I don't know what he means by that.
I said if he could stick around so we could do a sound test.
Oh, I'll allow it.
Oh yeah, sound check's good. I could definitely hear me and Baggins just now pretty loud.
Yeah, we're gonna try and get it balanced. There we go.
I can hear the echo of everyone, so hopefully you're not muted this time.
Yeah, I'm not. I double checked that. All right, Kamizite, how do we sound in relationship to one another? Me versus Looney versus Baggins. Anyone sound low, high? Well, that's good to hear.
Tonight?
Mithril will be joining us later. We are light.
Okay. I may suddenly disappear from time to time just because I have I'll probably have I may have family calling, who knows.
Gotcha. Right. For those who don't know, it's Baggins' birthday.
Happy birthday!
I wasn't specifying why people might call, but sure. That'll work.
Did you end up eating anything?
No, like I said, you put that out right as I got home from lunch.
Okay.
So.
Oh, I just barely put it away an hour ago, so.
Okay.
Well, it's in the downstairs fridge if you want any.
Okay, I appreciate it. I do appreciate it. The timing of it was just
Yeah. It happens.
I'll actually talk to you about it later. Thanks, Tommy. I don't want a new model of splice. I wasn't happy with the old one.
This is rude. This is very rude.
Now, by model, are we talking about like version, or are we talking like miniature figurine?
I have so
really
many
don't
questions I don't want the answer to.
I really don't want keyless entry splice.
I will admit the fact that you have Halo on the background after sending us that one video is quite something. That was a weird video, man.
Oh, that video is hilarious. So that video was released as Halo 3 was coming out. And
I will admit, it kind of had that one vibe of that, like, spiders on drugs, where it's like, it seems serious at first.
And then it takes a left turn. As like, there's like, Halo 3 outsells all forms of media that have ever been created.
I'm just like, wait a minute. I don't remember.
They buy out Nintendo and Sony. My favorite line, though, is just how the grid goes down and everyone has been so accustomed to Halo, they're not capable of face-to-face contact. Fighting breaks out immediately. Circle strafe camping and corpse humping prove to be ineffective strategies.
The fact that circle strafing didn't work, that line did amuse me.
Oh, that is an old meme. I can't believe I was able to find it. I can't believe I could remember it was from Loading Ready Run.
That was the second time in just a few days that I've said to you, what the crap did I just watch?
What was the other?
B-movie.
Oh, right. Well, that's your fault. Well, okay, no, it's not. Well, you're at least half involved.
It's my sister's fault.
You watched it. You consented.
It was the rule.
Speaking of, what did I just watch? I saw a trailer for a game called Squirrel with a Gun today.
I'll have to check that out.
I wonder what it's about.
It's well,
I hate it when they have these like vague, misleading titles.
All right, let's get started. So, it's my freshman year of college. We brought this up last time, where we learned to play Halo on the trial version. And everyone who was on my floor, we quickly became the most dominant force in the Halo trial version player base, because we learned something very early on. And what we learned was that the pistol in Halo Combat Evolved was absolutely busted. It was a hit scan weapon that had a zoom feature. And against humans, if you headshot them twice, it would break the shield, and then another headshot would kill them. So if you were accurate, you could kill people with 3 shots to the head or 5 shots to the body. And it's not like it had a really low fire rate. So most people didn't know this, and so no one understood why we were so much better, as they're shooting us with assault rifles from a distance, which actually have a spread and travel time, and they're trying to snipe you from across the map with the sniper rifle. And the answer is, don't use the sniper rifle, use the pistol, because pistol bullets travel instantaneously because they're hit scan.
Obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
Were the sniper rifles not hit scan?
They were, but it was harder to aim because you have to zoom in and you're a stationary target, whereas the pistol guy gets to strafe back and forth. And so making you unpredictable. And between that and we learned really quickly how to, because the most popular thing to do to try and win in the trial version was to simply just get into the Warthog and treat it like you're in Grand Theft Auto and just run people over. But if you learned how to play it, you could easily jump over the cars, which is a weird sentence to say. Throw a grenade, flip it over, and then you just mop up with the pistol again. And it's like, well, what about ammo consumption? Well, everyone starts off with a pistol and an assault rifle, so as soon as you kill them, you already have the ammo you need. And it was just that simple and that overpowered. And I loved it. They nerfed it afterwards in future games. But,
so it basically was the ambassador from TF2.
Yeah.
Steroids.
Yeah, kind of was. It's more so if you look into the history of it, there's rumors as to why it was so overpowered, where they kind of made like a last second change, and this is before you could patch things and stuff like that. So it was more now it's not this unstoppable force in the campaign, just because the Covenant have a lot more shields than players do in multiplayer. But in multiplayer, the thing was an absolute beast, and I loved the game for it because we knew the little secret, and we owned the trial version. I then started playing with actual players after I got it, and it turns out they were a lot better. They all knew about the pistol.
It's always weird when you go from being a big fish in a small pond to a small fish in the ocean.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was my first like obviously there were other games with weapons and stuff, but that was the first one where I was like, holy crap, this weapon's amazing. Do you guys have anything like that?
Well, since I already mentioned it, let's talk about the ambassador for the spy in TF2. I love that gun. It takes everything great about sniping, but lets you, shoot it on the run and get those crits on the headshots.
Yes. It was just better than the regular pistol.
Oh, yeah. It was superior to the spy's normal pistol in every way possible.
With the except it had a little less ammo, so you had to reload it a little more. And I think it did less hits on body shots. But
oh, yeah. It did less damage on a body shot.
But the thing is, your whole goal is I'm just going to try and shoot them in the head, and they're just going to be dead. And especially as the spy, you could sneak places sometimes and get headshots that you normally wouldn't be able to because the person's standing still in a spot they thought they were safe.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to be fair, I actually thought it was easier to land headshots with the ambassador than with the sniper rifle, just because you had the tools to get into much better positions.
And they're not. Yeah. They know where the snipers are going to be. The sniper perches are pretty telegraphed.
Oh, yeah, and they don't expect a spy. I mean, after a while they probably did, but they don't expect a spy to, they're more watching out for backstabs and less concerned about being shot.
Yeah.
And so when you get those headshot crits in, it just would, really, make a huge impact, and they just weren't expecting it. It was great.
Loved it. 10 out of 10.
This is an area that I have zero experience. It just, I'm not big on FPSs.
Yeah. Well, weapons are outside of FPSs. Do you have one you would wish to bring up?
Well, actually, if we're going for my first one, like, because you did ask the question, what was the first one?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you were just telling us what your first one was. Anyway, the first one that always has come to my mind is from what is technically an FPS. And that is the BFG 9000.
Darn straight.
I just remember the very first time I got that weapon, I was like, what does this one do? And I hit the button and everything just died.
I'm trying to remember, is that one that if you shoot too close to a wall, you'll kill yourself too?
No.
This was back.
The rocket launcher you could, but the BFG 9000 was a plasma weapon. And as such, the plasma weapons had no personal splash, and that's continued to the to the current games as well.
Yeah, so specifically for the listeners who may not know, I'm talking about the original Doom.
Okay, yeah, that was something I wasn't. I've been familiar with the gun. I just always thought that you could hit yourself with collateral damage, but if you couldn't, that just makes it that much better. Oh my goodness!
No, the only collateral was their death.
Yeah,
Dang.
it's just like you fire a tactical nuke.
It wasn't designed to be a fair weapon. It was
No.
designed to be the thing you got to murder
make you feel
everything in the
overpowered.
room.
Yeah, and this is the kind of weapon that comes only in a single player game.
Yeah, you in multiplayer it wouldn't be fair because the spread on it is insane. Now the thing is, it consumes so much ammo, so you end up it's your oh crap button, or I just saw a cyber demon button.
And it's just sort of I need to reset moment.
The other thing that's just fun about it is the fact that as a kid, I didn't understand why it was called the BFG 9000.
Oh, you didn't realize it was an abbreviation?
No.
I'm not sure I did as a kid either, to be honest.
That was one of the first things I learned about it.
No, my dad told me it stood for frickin'.
I think that might have been what I was first told too.
Wait, that's not what it stood for? No, just...
No. It, sweet summer child.
No, I mean, yes, I'm declaring it such now.
No, it was... It's just one of those things. You get the right weapon, you just get to feel powerful in a way that a lot of other mediums can never convey.
Yeah. Though I must say about calling it the BFG, I really liked how the original Doom was very clever about using language without using language. For example, one of the soundtracks, the song is called Kitchen Ace, and then in parentheses, and taking names. And I just love that name for the soundtrack. Kitchen Ace. It's great.
That'd be an amazing cooking show name.
Wouldn't it, though?
That would be pretty cool.
Now I want this. Can you make this happen, Baggins?
Now, you still want the and taking names part, or just Kitchen Ace?
I mean, if it works for the showrunners, I guess. I don't know.
Cooking shows don't really have runners.
Well, not with that attitude, they don't.
Showrunners are writers. Cooking shows are more unscripted.
In theory. But no, the BFG 9000 is awesome. The other one I love from the newer Doom games is they've improved the double-barreled shotgun, which was already a pretty dang cool weapon, but they improved it by giving it a grappling hook.
Like you do.
And so it also becomes your movement option because it won't grapple onto anything other than enemies.
So what's wrong with this?
And that game rewards you for getting in close.
Yes.
So that would work really well.
And so it's your get away from the big dangerous thing, get towards the nice squishy thing that is a hit pinata or hit point pinata. And hey, how's it going?
Surprise.
You're here earlier than usual.
Early.
Yeah, darn straight.
Stuff ended early.
Well then, let's get your name there. All right, we were just talking about the BFG 9000. Do you have any weapons you want to bring up?
Well, if we're still on Doom, I can talk about... So, if you've ever played... So, have any of you ever played the mod Brutal Doom?
I have not. It's on my to-do list at some point, but that to-do list is getting bigger. Yes,
I haven't really played Doom since Doom was just one game and new.
Fair enough.
That was a long time ago.
Best way I can put it is that this mod predates Doom 2016, yet somehow manages to make the original Doom feel more like how 2016 and Eternal feel, yet still in the original engine for the most part. It's modded so you can have you can look up and down. There's still not really jump. Speed is different. Some of the weapons are different. Enemies are more aggressive. there's a lot of changes to it, but it actually functions pretty well and is pretty interesting. But weapons are. I'm trying to think how if you still aim, if you actually aim vertically or not. I think you do in this, and
That's
they
a
implemented
huge
stuff like headshots.
departure.
Huge change, huge departure. But it actually makes, in many situations, the best weapon the normal shotgun, which I in
Really,
Brutal
more
Doom
so than the double
nicknamed-
shotgun.
Well, it depends on what you're after. I've nicknamed the normal shotgun the sniper shotgun because it feels like the spread pattern is a lot more close, and since you just aim it up, it is like the instant headshot machine. Whereas the super shotgun is, oh, you have a lot of enemies you want to take out. It's a lot more wide spray in that mod. But yeah, no, it's actually pretty cool how much it changes, yet still feels like, for the most part, it just works. There are a couple levels that don't work perfectly if they required, like, you can play the Brutal Doom mod with, like, fan-made megawads, but a lot of times fan-made levels require certain movement tech that then the Brutal Doom mod messes with, because it messes with some of the momentum stuff, and so it doesn't quite work out. But anyway, cool stuff. Sniper shotgun is what I've nicknamed it, just personally, because it can shoot at quite a distance pretty darn accurately with that fairly limited circle spread pattern.
Interesting. Yeah, because in the original Doom, once you get the super shotgun, there's really, except for ammo consumption, there's really no reason to use the original. Now they fixed that in the newer games by making it so the secondary firing options, the single shotgun has some grenade stuff that it does. It has a sticky grenade mod, and so that's better in certain situations. But beyond that, no, there's really no reason to switch back in the original. But that goes into the brilliance of good weapon design should make it so that you don't always use the weapon.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Because otherwise it's just like, okay, well now there's no choice here. It's just I will use the overpowered thing.
Well, I mean, that's okay with like RPGs when you upgrade from to new equipment. But that's more of a progression thing.
Yeah, that's you want that in an RPG. Strategically switching between weapons isn't really what you do in an RPG. Usually, at least.
Yeah, except for dot hack, but yeah.
Dot hack is something that I'm hearing more and more about through I Think We Overleveled, that I'm learning is its own little slice of odd game design that nothing else seems to do it.
Yes.
Yeah, I only played the first one a bit and then just sort of fell off because it wasn't my bag, but the people I knew who played it were like obsessed.
Definition of niche gaming. No, the
definition.
Well, so okay. Talking about a weapon that once you get it, you never stop using it. There's one that's literally it's designed that way. The original Legend for Zelda, the first time you take a full swing or full health swing with the Master Sword.
Yeah, speaking of projectile weapons, right?
Yes. Well, it makes having full health just so much infinitely better.
Oh yeah.
Than having even just a quarter health loss. You're just like, no, I can't shoot.
I do remember being so disappointed after I had upgraded it to realize that the ranged attack didn't get the damage upgrade.
Oh, once you temper it, or
when you temper it, the ranged attack stays.
You talking in Link to the Past or the original?
Oh, yes. So in the original, it's kind of the Master Sword. That's the magic sword.
Well, yeah, because there's the white sword and the magic sword in the original.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Master Sword, its first appearance in The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past.
Yeah, which was just such a great moment. I mean, that sword, you knew as soon as you drew it. I mean, the whole fact you have to go on 3 quests to get these items to be able to pull it, and then the music that swells and builds up as you pull that sword out.
Mhm.
Oh, it was such a huge game.
And it's just
like it's so weird because like I can go in and beat that game in a couple hours now, but back then I spent days on it.
Oh yeah.
I spent weeks on it, in fact, because I'm just going around exploring, and then, trial and error. Nobody had solved it. It was brand new, and
it was brand new.
When you finally actually Jumanji reference, very nice. But when you finally actually pull the sword, there is something very satisfying about it.
Oh yeah, and then it's like, oh, I finally have this awesome sword, and then you swing it with full health, and you're like, this sword's even more amazing than I could have possibly imagined. Which is why the Master Sword is still one of my favorite weapons of all time.
You and about a billion other gamers.
Yeah, well, goodness, I bought a replica Master Sword to use in proposing to Lizzie with, okay? Like,
Did she say yes?
Yeah, she totally said yes. And, though she has told me since that if I didn't have the Master Sword with me, then, no, she didn't say anything to that effect.
I would respect her if she said that. She's like, I don't want to marry a poser. Look, marriage is about standards, man.
It's dangerous to go in pairs. I need this.
Yes, exactly.
But no, before I did all this, and now that I'm realizing, I think I lost where it was. IGN back in 2010 actually did their top 100 video game weapons list. And looking over it, I was sort of flabbergasted by some of their choices. Just because I'm like, really? That? But their top 5 is hard to argue with. The top 5 already has 2 of the things that we talked about, and they're 2 and 1 on their list. Number 1 is the Master Sword, and number 2 was the BFG 9000. Number 5 is one we've discussed in the past for level design, and that was the gravity gun from Half-Life 2.
Of course.
I mean, it's just so freaking satisfying.
I knew you were going to bring this one up.
Well, one, I put it in the thumbnail, but also, it's just a fun thing. Like how you just get to, like, especially for its time, there was nothing else like it. No one else was playing with physics the way that Valve was.
Oh no.
No, not back then. I mean, it seems like almost impossible to think about, like, really no one else was, because that's so common now. But no, it was not common at that time.
Well, it was just too difficult.
Turn everything into the weapon.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, though if I'm honest, as awesome as the gravity gun is, I didn't actually use it as much as I did in using the telekinesis power in BioShock. I mean, it's the exact same concept, exact same weapon, but I realized I used it in BioShock more than I did in Half-Life. I wonder if it's a combination of scarcity of ammo between the two games, or if the fact that I actually finished one and I...
Yeah, and that's why
Half-Life 2 bugged out on my save file, and
well, that is a problem then.
When I couldn't progress. Though an update did fix it eventually, but I still haven't beaten it.
No, for me, that's exactly why I was using it so much, just because the original Half-Life, they did not make it easy for you to get ammo.
Fair.
Especially in Ravenholm, where that was kind of the point.
Is that why we don't go?
Yeah, because there's not enough ammo.
Back when achievements were still fairly new, I remember there being an achievement for getting through all of Ravenholm using only the gravity gun.
Yeah. No, they
I
it's
know
one of those things.
they-
It was clear.
I mean-
that was what they wanted.
Well, they designed that stage with no ammo drops specifically so you would use the gravity gun. I mean, it's when you first got it.
Yeah, there are ammo drops. Like, it is possible to beat it with the ammo that's there.
That, and they, it had saw blades just randomly strewn throughout the entire area too. So,
but that's the thing. It's like, why would you use ammo when you can use a saw blade?
Exactly.
Like, one of those things is just infinitely, like, I've been using bullets throughout this game. Now I get to cut things in half violently. And really, isn't that what we're all here for?
Okay, so I've got a question for you, Splice.
Okay.
Because before we started this episode, you did kind of give us a rule of, if it shoots or blows up, it's a weapon.
Yeah.
So question:
because the debate was the screw attack.
So I have a question. What about the portal gun?
The portal gun is not a weapon.
Yeah,
The portal gun is a tool.
Cool.
I have
Very
seen it used
useful tool.
violently, and it does shoot.
But then again, the Link's hook shot's also, but it's also kind of more a weapon.
It shoots.
Well, it's tool weapon. Well, likewise, it's funny you mentioned the gravity gun because I said the power in BioShock. Would you call one a power up and one a weapon, even though functionally they're identical?
So the thing is, they have guns in the game as well, so it really muddies the water. But I don't know. Some of them,
those psyker powers are basically weapons, but then it's like you're turning yourself into the weapon. Kind of. It's complicated.
yeah, and that's
goodness, that makes me think of Mass Effect 3, the Vanguard's ability to basically teleport body slam into enemies. Did you play as Vanguard ever?
no, never did that.
It was actually fun.
Because if I did, I don't remember it.
I mean, though, usually Mass Effect, I like to, be able to turn invisible and snipe.
So which one was the Vanguard? Because that's where I'm struggling.
I know it was in Mass Effect 3. I'm trying to think if it was in 2.
That's the combination of military and psych, or whatever it's called, right?
Could be. That could definitely be true.
Military and psych. You mean like two classes?
I can't remember what the actual naming convention was, but the one, like, there's the soldier and the psionic.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think Vanguard was when you mix the two, or was it when you mix tech?
No, it was definitely psychic mixed with military. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
See, and I tended to do more. I tended to do more the engineering stuff.
Yeah.
But no. Yeah, I don't know. BioShock is a weird one. I don't know how to classify everything in BioShock.
Because, I mean, that pyrokinetic where, he snaps his fingers and the enemy in your crosshair explodes.
Yeah. It's pretty weapony. All right. So this is another one that's a gun. I don't know if anyone played this, but even if I didn't play it, I know this weapon. Turok 2, the cerebral bore. Does anyone here know what I'm talking about?
I've heard of Turok 2. That's about it.
I've heard of that. I've seen it in articles, but I've never.
It's a gun that basically shoots a specialized thing that when it hits the head, it then drills into their head and causes it like they just die.
Well, that's horrifying.
Well, especially because I think Turok 2 was on the N64, so it was like one of the few Nintendo like M-rated games, and so it's one of those things that everyone's so used to. Mario 64, you get there, you're like, whoa, and it just leaves an impression. I mean, literally in their case. What with the boring into their head. But that was number 3. And number 4 is a different weapon, the Blades of Chaos from Gods of War. Which...
That's a classic.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. What's interesting, I think Blades of Chaos are cooler now than they were back then. Because the new God of War game puts a lot more weight to them storyline-wise.
Agreed.
They always had some weight to them, but the weight was like kind of back-loaded, and then it was just like, oh, well, I have it now. It was designed so Kratos would be cooler than just person with sword. It's like, well, what if you had blades on chains?
What if you had sword chucks?
Basically.
I mean, it is what they are.
Chucks, yo.
But then they took that and what they were and what they meant, and then transported basically into the future and whatnot. You have so much more like a meaning and impetus and build up because you don't start with them, you get them later on. If I remember right, in the reboot.
Well, and I think he goes back.
Oh, it's definitely a moment when you get them in the reboot.
Yeah, because he goes back because there's something. He has to get his son or something, and so
you're fighting ice stuff, and your weapon is ice powered, and so you need something that can actually fight against the ice.
Well, and if I remember correctly, like the ghost of Athena, like is haunting you as you're going back to get it or something.
Yep.
And so like there's just all this weight. And I think isn't that what unlocks your ability to use Spartan Rage for the first time?
I think so. Yeah, because you're going through the Norse Helheim.
Yeah.
And it's guarded by like these ice zombies, and he's like, and the axe isn't doing any damage to them. It's like you need something else, and he's just like, dang it.
Here we go again.
and you're in the underworld, or all of the Greek gods that you killed are kind of there.
Yeah, and so it's this whole thing because it's also this whole idea of he's been trying to live a better life, if for no other reason than for his son, and
he wants to live differently than he was forced to live.
Yeah,
he wants to give his son a different life,
and then it's just suddenly, nope. It's time to go back to this well, and then it just covers so much area. Like you don't like lose the reason to use the axe in a lot of situations. It's just for fighting large swaths of people, it just becomes so good because you're just swinging them everywhere. No, the Blades of Chaos are really cool. But yeah, so that was their top 5. It's hard to argue with their top 5. I think it's got some really cool stuff. I would probably put something instead of the Cerebral Bore, but I understand that it affects their like when you see it affects you. But all the other stuff, I'm like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. But yeah, another one that really like felt different once you got it, and I just remember the first time I saw it, I was in awe. The first time you get the power bomb in Super Metroid.
I remember that clearly.
You just sit there. It's very much the same as the BFG 9000 experience, where you just suddenly realize I have this thing. It has very limited ammo, but holy crap. It hits like an absolute freight train. Well,
and you can heal yourself with it too.
Yeah, that I didn't know about. But then you have.
I knew about that from the comic. With you, like I never was able to. Figure out how to do it.
The comic cover.
A Super Metroid comic.
I just didn't realize it was in the comic.
Oh, absolutely! Like, there's a part where Samus is dying, and so she has to pull out the super bomb, and it's like this huge epic thing.
and you when you say the comic, are you talking about the one that was just in the Nintendo Power?
Nintendo Power comic, yep.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I did
Well,
not.
that, and also if you just let the game play, it shows her doing it. Like
Does it
it's
show
just
it
in the
healing?
title screen? Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Like that's how they actually tell you in game. Is just you turn on the game and just let it autoplay.
I did not know this. I mean, I knew it did that. I didn't realize it was showing you how to do advanced techniques. But
Yeah, most of the advanced techniques were told through the little critters, but
yeah, because I knew like the shine spark is taught through the jumping thing.
uh-huh.
And
So is
jump
wall
from-
jumping as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is good game design. But I don't know. The power bomb
And-
just
and
hit
I-
different.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's just sort of necessary to save them after that. I mean, it's only fair.
I don't know, man. I think we should have to vote on it through donations.
That's
Yes.
what the speedrunners do.
I just remember the first time I watched like Awesome Games Done Quick doing the super, and that's like save the animals versus, and I'm like, what the crap are they talking about? I was so confused because I had never known that you could save or not save the animals. Like I didn't
I
realize.
hadn't known until then either.
Really? You didn't know?
Yeah, I had no
Why
clue.
would I know?
I had no clue about that room at all.
Are you kidding? When the countdown starts, I was all about getting the heck out of Dodge.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's just I just want to live. And so yeah, I was completely in the dark on that.
Yeah, no, I'm the type that curiosity gets the best of me. I'm like, I have enough time. I'm curious if something changed. Oh, something did change down here.
Yeah, that is not my first instinct.
Crazy.
Okay, but let's actually, since we're talking about Super Metroid and the end game, the Hyper Beam.
Oh yeah, dude.
I was
was
gonna
a
bring that
big
up
one
when it's
for
like
me.
a
That's a whole different category of the temporary weapon.
Uh-huh.
But still,
Well, it's
just the
like-
way you shoot it, and Mother Brain's head just whiplashes back
Yeah.
in a
But it's
way
one
that
of
you've
the-
never seen any enemy do before. It's just
It's one of
oh,
those things that
so good.
that Nintendo has done a couple times with Metroid where they put you through a hard time and like you're sitting there being like, how the heck am I supposed to do this? And then that is your reward. Where like, you know, at the end of Zero Mission and at the end of this, it's just like
At the end of
you
Dread.
were in a terrified position, and then it's just like, okay, now you're the monster. Go.
the end of Prime 3, I want to say as well. It's with the phase-on beam.
Yes.
Or is it Prime
trying to
1?
think,
I forget
did-
which one.
I'm trying to remember if Other M did too, or I can't remember.
Yeah, it's a classic. I was going to bring it up in terms of like, we were talking about weapons where it's like, yeah, generally, good weapon design is you want to get a weapon, but then it's not the only thing you use. Well, this is kind of the exception of like, this weapon is the reward, the 11th hour savior, and you have literally all of like 5 minutes to use it, so you better really enjoy it.
Uh-huh.
It's the victory
Well, like,
lap.
it's similar to I would this is a power up rather than a weapon, but like when you get the mega mushroom for
Yeah, kind
like
of.
the new Super Mario Brothers, just go crush everything, enjoy.
Well, and that it's just the idea that when something's temporary, it can be overpowered. I mean, just the classic example, the regular star.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just like, oh, literally, as you're using it, you are invulnerable and unstoppable, and it's great to be you. For
just give them a
for 10
moment to
seconds.
feel awesome, and then
Course.
let them go.
Yeah, of course. Then there's the weapons that they intentionally make overpowered, but you as the dumb player may not notice it. How great it is.
pistol and
for
Halo.
me, well, in my case, there's Xenogears, right? There's an actual gear, giant robot you get right at the very end called the Xenogear, and I'm just like, oh, it's an upgrade, okay. And I just thought it was kind of normal, but I didn't pay attention to the numbers. So the way the in-game gears work is there is a percentage that if you max out its its power level, like usually you power level up and then you use a super move which resets your power level and then you power back up, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're fully at the full level, there's a percentage that you'll go into a hyper mode where basically you have the hyper beam for like 3 turns, right? And it's awesome when it happens. And so everyone has like some percentage that's like 5 to 10%. I didn't pay attention to the number on the Xenogear until I'd already beaten the game at least once, where I'm like looking, I'm like, wait a minute. Does that percentage say infinity? Does it? Oh my gosh. Don't tell me this has a guarantee. Oh my gosh. So, playing after, trying really hard to beat the first boss, not realizing how overpowered the weapon they give you at the end was.
They were trying to make it easier.
Boss. Yeah. Rebeating it, realizing, I can go into hyper mode whenever I want. It was suddenly a lot easier to beat that final boss.
Funny how that works.
It turns out God mode is really overpowered.
Yes. I'm like, oh my goodness, this gear is amazing. How did I never notice it?
And the answer was, you're like, why would they give me something so overpowered?
And so, but no, that actually deserves to be. I guess that's more of an exoskeleton suit than a weapon. But I mean, that's still a weapon, though, right?
Yeah, it's still a weapon-ish. I don't know. I don't know how gears work. So I'm just gonna say you're correct because I don't know enough to prove you wrong.
Does it shoot and or blow up?
Well, he's a melee fighter, so it actually punches with it. So. Yeah, he uses the mech's own fists and feet to attack, so...
I shoot fist.
Well, no, he doesn't shoot. He punches with a giant robot.
Elbow rocket?
Oh, elbow rocket. I love you.
Him? Well, there is a character that does do the elbow rocket, but his is not one of them.
I am not one of them. Sorry, accidental gout run.
I got...
Okay. Send me a picture you got.
Thank you. That
I'm helping.
That's obviously what I was asking for.
Good. All right. No. So,
Are you asking me to send a picture? Or
no.
No.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Anyway. So okay. We've done Super Metroid. We've done a couple of those. We did a little bit of Legend of Zelda with the Master Sword, but
you can't leave out the Big Goron sword, man.
I did.
Oh my gosh!
I never got it. I didn't know it existed, and then my
friend.
You
what?
Didn't bother getting it at all.
Not everyone does the full trade quest.
That's the thing. People talk about Shadow Link being hard in Ocarina of Time, but I'm like, I always had the Big Goron sword, so wasn't that difficult because the Big Goron sword was long enough that when you swung it, the hitbox would get past his shield.
Yep.
You see, I had my favorite weapon from Ocarina of Time. I had the Big Goron hammer. The Megaton hammer.
That's a good one, too.
The Megaton hammer.
Yeah, sorry.
The Megaton hammer is pretty good, too, man.
See, I remember it kind of blew my mind when I found out that apparently you're supposed to use the Megaton hammer in the final boss, because I always had the Big Goron sword. So when like the Master Sword was unavailable, I pull out the Big Goron sword and start attacking. I'm like, this is super easy. What's going on? And everybody's just like, oh, remember the part where you had to use the hammer? I was like,
no.
The part when you what? The part when you what?
Use the hammer.
I didn't. Yeah, I always just use the Big Goron sword.
I mean, if you did the quest for it, you would.
The Big Goron sword. I mean, I love the Big Goron sword, but there is a part of me. It's like, it's kind of not cool that it's stronger than the Master Sword, but it's also just
It has to
It's
be
stronger. It's the best sword in the game. You can't.
They ask you to do way more to get the Biggoron sword than to get the Blade of Evil's Bane.
Yeah.
Which,
You
for
have
the
to
record,
race
is
and
still
not teleport.
one of the reasons why the Master Sword is so cool, just because it has that subtitle.
Yeah, the Blade of Evil's Bane is a fantastic title.
But no, if you go to the effort to get it, I just remember, like, in comparison, because like people told me about, oh, you can get this really cool sword in Majora's Mask, and so I started doing the trade quest for it. But that one's bad because the second level of the sword, if you don't have enough to get to the next level, it destroys itself in a certain number of uses.
Yeah,
and
it's like a fragile, like the Goron knife or something, I want to say.
Yeah, I don't remember what. I just remember that it did that, and I was really mad because I didn't know about that.
I'm trying to think, but it's not permanently broken. You just have to start the quest line over, right?
Yeah, and that's horrible.
This dislike of breakable weapons.
Yeah, it goes back a long ways, it turns out.
Well, I mean, the Biggoron sword, the first version you get's the Goron knife, the Biggoron knife.
Oh, that's what I'm confusing it with, yeah.
And that one just tricks you out because you do just throw that one away and replace it with the Biggoron sword, but you have to go through the quest line.
The Giant's knife?
Yeah, the Giant's knife. Yeah, that's what it's called. And you get it, but it's easy to get and it quickly breaks. And it's like, oh, but if I want a permanent one, I have to do this quest line to get the Biggoron sword. And it's totally worth it. Because that sword is overpowered and awesome.
Yeah, and it might just be because at that point I had very little interaction with old school RPG fetch quest type stuff that I never even noticed like this long thing. Because I was just like, I'm just going to progress the plot. Because that's all I cared about at the time.
You know what? Fair.
And then I find out, and then I find out from my friends, like, oh no, there's this whole weapon quest, and I'm just like, what are we talking about? This is not my experience. I don't remember any quest. What if I don't want to drink the potion?
The pod quests?
Top 10 potions. But no, it's interesting just how certain things just get locked behind stuff and you can not even know about it. And it just becomes like its own little thing.
Well, yeah, the worst example I could think of is in Final Fantasy XII, and this is one thing I hate about Final Fantasy XII, the strongest weapon in the game is the Omega Spear. But the only way to guarantee the spear to be in a treasure chest is to not open some other treasure chest in an earlier dungeon.
Oh yeah, the whole Zodiac spear.
They started doing that back in FF6.
I have never heard of this. This sounds horrible.
It was horrible. Absolutely horrible.
Final Fantasy XII is infamous for several reasons, but one of the big ones that, like, I've never played the game yet, but even I know this, is the Zodiac Spear is the most powerful weapon in the game.
Zodiac Spear, my bad.
But it can only be obtained in a treasure chest that... So, for some reason, they decided that linked treasure chests was a good idea. So basically...
What does that mean?
If you open a treasure chest in a certain area, then a different treasure chest in a later area will either already be opened or will be empty.
That sounds stupid.
See, that's something that they played with since FF6 and Chrono Trigger. It's just
Chrono Trigger's
made sense, and it was the same item.
Chrono Trigger's made sense. Chrono Trigger's made sense except for the fact that you end up in a causality loop.
Yeah. The Epic fixes it, man.
Because with Chrono Trigger, there was a chest that if you open it up in the future and then in the past, you could open it twice. If you open it in the past, it's open in the future already.
Well,
I
the
thought that
way
was a
it
nice touch. I
And
know.
it's a cool touch, but there is an absolute paradox that happens.
Sure.
one instance of Chrono Trigger that did something similar, which was very frustrating to me. And initially, it's one of the reasons why I stopped playing it for a little bit before coming back a couple months later to finish. Is there are certain treasure chests that you open to get the best equipment in the game for like 3 of your characters, their best weapons, or at least second best weapons. But in order to get the best version of them, you have to open them in the past, but not take the item out. This is one, like, examine them, but not take the item out.
Oof.
And then you have to go to the future and then take the item out. And nothing in the game even hints or tells you that this is a thing.
Wait, which game?
That you can do.
I do
Chrono
remember.
Trigger.
This is Chrono Trigger. It's one of the characters.
It's like the Swallow, I think, is one of the ones. Like Chrono's best sword, I want to say.
Chrono's best sword, I thought was the Rainbow Sword.
Rainbow Sword? Okay.
Yeah,
That you
and
make from the
that one's
rainbow shell,
crafted with a rainbow shell.
What type of Care Bear
I forget
nonsense
the
is
specifics.
this?
Maybe it's not their best weapons. Maybe it's like their second best. But it's like certain very high level good pieces of equipment that you get like mediocre versions that are still decent if you open it in the past. But if you examine it, don't open it, wait to the future, then come back.
Let it charge up, essentially.
Yeah. But nothing in the game tells you that that's what it's doing, which is a frustration point.
I think.
Yeah, there's a few things like that where it feels like you have to have the guide to get it.
Guide, darn it.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like in Chrono Trigger they did a decent job of kind of giving you a clue to that, but I'm trying to think of your specific example. Well, I mean, they're in the Sun Palace, but that one they make very clear you're supposed to go into the future.
Well, because you have to charge up the Sunstone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have no clue what we're talking about.
But hey, while we're there, look what's in Frog's hand. That's one of the other awesome weapons of, I mean, Final Fantasy, Chrono Trigger, and probably some other games. The Masamune.
Chrono Trigger had the best one.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, the
Story
Chrono
represents
Trigger,
it.
it was basically the Excalibur more so than the Masamune in Chrono Trigger. But, the Masamune, always the best, one of the, the best, if not one of the best weapons.
It's it's always the best sword of its type.
Yeah. And, in the original Final Fantasy, it also had the added bonus that every class could wield it, even the White Mage. But yeah, I do like the Chrono Trigger version better because it's closer to, Excalibur. It's closer to the Master Sword, where it's actually magical. Technically, in Chrono Trigger, there's like 2 sentient magical beings that compose it, Masa and Mune. But yeah, the Masamune is just a great weapon, especially even with the. And there's even the iconic version in FF7 that Sephiroth has. So
I just learned something.
That being,
Masamune isn't the name of a sword; it's the name of a sword maker.
Yes, yeah.
It's history.
No, yeah, it's based off of a real sword maker and his swords.
But I just never realized that it was. I was thinking it was named after a weapon of legend in in some ancient lore. I didn't realize it was actually named after a swordsmith.
a person of legend.
Well, it's like a saying Stradivarius.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, and there is a very famous. When people say the Masamune, it's the one there is one of his swords that's in a museum. That they've even done like multiple scans of this weapon, which if you've watched the Shadiversity, it's not the most impressive weapon in reality, but it's a very famous swordsmith and a piece of Japanese history that's pretty awesome.
So we don't shoot radiation at the Mona Lisa, but at the Masamune, it's a different story.
That is a reference only you get.
No, only you get.
Yeah, fair point.
That and also the Murasame also comes up often in games as kind of like a second tier Masamune But
Yep.
once again, that's another real swordsmith
Hmm.
that it's named after.
That is something I've noticed about, like, the Japanese are not afraid to just put real life people into fantasy games.
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
I mean,
Especially in any of the Square franchises.
Especially if their names are Genji and Hanzo. And
Yeah.
It's not just Squaresoft.
It's just like, you know,
Or Goemon.
I would just be
Goemon.
really weirded out if, like, you know, Abraham Lincoln was made a summon or something.
What, you mean you never played Codename Steam?
Do they do that in Codename Steam? I don't really know what the game is.
Technically, Codename Steam is like a mechanical Lincoln, but still.
Mecha Lincoln
forget-
shows up.
Don't forget, Splice. This is the
I
ultimate
forget the
showdown of
details.
Ultimate
I never
Destiny.
played it myself, but
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think we
Codename
should
seems
summon more
weird.
dead presidents into video games. I think it'd be great, but it's just not something that typically occurs.
He does get summoned in wax figure form in Gravity Falls.
Yes.
Well, I mean, okay, you say we don't do that much, but I mean, like, have you watched Supernatural, The Cult? That's
No.
named after the gunsmith.
I don't know what we're talking about.
There was in that show there was a specific
Oh, you're talking. I'm
gun.
talking about video games.
sure, but yeah, do we have gunsmith names in video games? Yeah, I guess I'm thinking just TV
Like
show, not
they do it in
not a-
things like Assassin's Creed, but that's literally the whole point of Assassin's Creed,
Yeah,
where it is historical fiction, and as a result, they play all kinds of, like, that's the whole point. They're playing with history. It's a toy, as opposed to like it's just the fact that they put it in fantasy series. I just find it so interesting because you've put real life people into something that is, by its very definition, unreal.
Of course, one thing I do find interesting about the Masamune is typically they do have it be a katana, which is what, the real Masamune was forging, but not in Chrono Trigger. The Masamune is very much a European broadsword.
Yeah.
that looks like Excalibur.
Well,
and is
and
treated
it's-
like Excalibur.
Well, he's clearly a European style knight.
Oh yeah, which is why he's one of my favorite characters too. Gosh, I love Frog.
I'm just imagining like 200, 300 years in the future when we're on like Final Fantasy 376 and the main summon that you have is Miyamoto.
I mean,
oh dear.
you say that, but I don't think you're wrong. Like, I think you're actually
it's not
correct.
The realm of possibility.
No, like, I actually think you might be onto something here.
Well, could you imagine if there was like a summon that heals your party called Uematsu? Like, it plays like some gorgeous music and your party gets healed. I could see it. I
mean,
totally
if
see
it better be
Just-
awesome music.
I don't even think it necessarily needs to be a summon. Like in the lore, there's a bard of legend named Uematsu or Nobuo.
Ah, yeah. Okay, I could totally see it.
Nobumatsu.
And honestly,
this
I
is
wouldn't be
just a couple
surprised if the
steps.
name got kind of smushed together like that.
I mean, this is just a couple steps removed from the Wandering Minstrel just being Yoshi P's character avatar.
Fair enough,
in
yeah.
game.
Yeah, there's a character, for those who aren't aware, there's a character in FF14 just called the Wandering Minstrel. And when you go to unlock the extreme versions of a lot of the trials, the bosses, you talk to this guy and you tell him your story, and then he kind of tells it back to you in a much more epic way. And that's actually what the fight is. It's his version of your adventure.
That's an interesting way to play with that.
Because everything in FF14 is backed up by lore.
Including the stuff that isn't.
No, I mean, like, literally everything. There's a story tied to every little thing that you unlock. They really went all in.
All right. So you guys were talking about RPG weapons. So I got to bring up my RPG, which is Super Mario RPG. And most people here would expect
I know what you're going to say.
Most people would say
It's
the lazy
big.
shell. It's not the lazy shell. It's like
No?
I mean, don't get me wrong. The lazy shell, like, it's just overpowered. It's amazing. No,
Is it the Hurley glove?
it's the Hurley glove. Like,
yeah, I love that weapon. Hilarious.
it's just one of those things where I did not expect Bowser to just throw Mario at the problem.
I know. All I know is like, I wish this was more powerful so I wouldn't, stop using it. But it's like, I love this weapon while I have it, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's just hilarious.
And I just love the idea because it's Bowser sort of getting his revenge on Mario. Just, you've caused me all these
Honestly,
problems.
All of Bowser's weapons have some level of fun to them. I mean, you have the chain chomp that he just chucks at him.
Frankly, the worst one is
him.
his final one, the drill claw. It's just not that cool.
I like the drill claw.
Just compared to all the others, it just, I don't know, it just doesn't do it for me. Because it's just, the others are just so much fun.
Well, and then Peach uses the frying pan. Like, one time someone talks to you about Tangled, Peach did it first.
Yes.
This is very true.
Princess in a pink dress hitting people with a frying pan? I'm sorry, that was done years before.
But that's also part of the reason why Tangled was one of the better Disney princesses, because she chose the correct inspiration.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was an actual adaptation of the Mario legend.
Yep, without question. Though they need to add it to the new Mario movie. Peach has to hit someone with a frying pan.
Now that you say that,
the people are going to immediately try and accuse her of being a Tangled ripoff.
Oh yeah,
that's why they have to do
where
it.
The wars begin.
It's why they have to do it.
Yeah, they have to do it and then get community noted, and it'll be glorious.
That's where the war begins. That will be the shot fired around the world.
Oh yeah,
or heard around the world.
Well,
and the frying pan.
You have to have the sound effect that goes.
The world?
You have to have the sound effect that goes with it, because that sound effect was. It's one of the few times where like early sound design was just so perfect, where it's like that felt like a frying pan hitting someone.
Oh yeah,
frying
pan. Awesome weapon.
Yeah, ton of fun. Then on top of it, the other thing that was just the fact that Gino, who's a puppet, and then his arm just unfolds out to just be a gun.
Yeah.
It's just like
the first one was the finger shot.
Yeah.
And yeah.
But it's just the fact that he's been using all this magical stuff, like because he's your black mage of the party. He casts the spells that makes the people fall down. Also, he shoots you with just a gun. The most powerful spell of all, gun.
It's so amusing though, because and it makes sense considering like the time and the culture around when it came out. All of the bullets that he fires bounce off.
Yes.
They're bludgeoning weapons.
Well, look, this is also the same game series that has a bullet bill that goes slower than Mario's run speed. So the Mario series has never been too accurate with firearms, which is a sentence I didn't expect to say today.
Well, I mean, if you've seen the making of Mario versus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, they purposely made the guns look like, toy ray guns because they didn't want to have the Mario universe have realistic guns. That is a requirement.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not too surprising.
Meanwhile, the Sonic universe went the opposite direction and said, "Here's Shadow."
Oh gosh.
Okay, so the Sonic universe.
Yes.
Here's the thing. No.
Let's hear him out.
Sonic fans of the time actually wanted that.
Oh yeah.
Some
I don't
did.
know why.
Some did. Having
like-
lived through this era, some did.
Fair. But like there were people. I remember hearing
I mean,
stories
goodness,
of
we
people.
mocked it mercilessly.
I remember hearing stories of people seeing, like, what was it? Was it Sonic Adventure 1 or Sonic Adventure 2? Whichever one had Big the Cat first in it. I remember hearing stories of people going through promotional material and getting convinced that he had a sword, not a fishing rod.
Yeah.
And then they did Sonic and the Black Knight where they gave him a sword. And it's just like, what are you doing? Sonic Team, what are you
This
on?
is why you don't base major lore decisions on internet polls and, Reddit or Tumblr posts.
Well, I think the Sonic franchise is an interesting one because the Sonic franchise always at the start was like hey, this is for the big kids.
Oh yeah,
because
it was the edgy.
Yeah, well, it's because they
Genesis
were taking,
does what Nintendo.
Yeah, well, and it was the perfect marketing at the time because at the time, Nintendo was the guy. They were the big fish. And so by aiming for the slightly older crowd that had grown a little bit out of the Nintendo phase, they were looking for something just a little more edgy. It makes sense. And so you sit there, you look at Sonic, and they actually were successfully iterating on that theory of what they were at the time because the Sonic fans were now older. They were looking for more mature games. Now, the problem was they said, how do we make Sonic more mature rather than how do we make more mature games?
Yeah.
There's only so mature you can take a spiky anime hedgehog until it just becomes unintentional satire.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. But it's also what makes it so hilarious, and I love it.
Am I
oh my goodness.
Am I a villain? You decide.
The funny thing is it was, I think it was a cousin, I don't know, the people I knew that actually bought Shadow the Hedgehog were like 10 years old, so it's like,
oh yeah.
I'm just like, they tried to make this game so edgy for teenagers, but the teenagers thought it was hilarious, but it's like these 10-year-olds that thinks it's cool.
Well, yeah, well, it's because at that point, and
the original teenagers, and we laugh at it.
I mean, think about original games. The thing was, the original games were back in like the late 80s, early 90s, were being made by a bunch of 20-year-olds who were just having a good time. Then the next era comes out, and this is when they're all hitting like their 40s, and they're now officially in their, is this what the kids nowadays like phase? Because they're officially now
kids.
Yeah, well, because they're young enough that they don't realize that they're out of it yet. They don't realize they're not hip. Because they've been hip their entire life.
Wait,
I
what
used
age?
to be with it.
In the 40s.
And they changed what it was.
Then they changed what it was. Now what I'm with isn't it, and what it is strange and scary to me. It'll happen to you.
Still the most
Grandpa
accurate
Simpson.
It's the most
Already
accurate Simpsons
happening.
quote of all time.
It all comes back to Abe.
It does.
I'm not even 30 yet, and it's already happening.
Yep. And it's important that everyone goes through it. This is important. Everyone
thing,
has to come through with it.
Well, it's funny. I still feel like I don't know, because I'm into video games and well, if I'm perfectly honest, things are a little strange right now because everything that was popular when I was a little kid is what's now popular today.
Oh yes.
For example,
it's because our generation is now the 40-year-olds making the games.
Well, and not just games, but like even like TV shows, and I'm not talking like new stuff. I'm talking like kids today want to watch the Super Mario Bros. Super Show. Kids today want to watch the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 1990.
Well, I mean,
what's a cruise
even
line
like
from 2000s.
even like looking back, a lot of people, like if you look at some of the most streamed stuff right now, Friends, Seinfeld, it's like
Yeah.
these old sitcom, and I say old, the 90s are what people are wanting, and so it's just really interesting to see.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's like I expected that whole kids not to be into my stuff, but they are in a way I never expected. So I'm just saying I expected Abe Simpson, but now that I'm getting close to that age, it's the complete reverse.
I expected it, but not in the way it's happened, or not as soon as it's happened. Because I remember thinking, like, back in the 80s and 90s, the whole retro craze was a thing, with like dressing up like you're in the 60s, wearing bell bottoms became a thing again. And there's this whole retro aspect, and we're in that.
Yeah.
The
I think-
90s are the retro craze right now.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it's
which is
the
ridiculous,
internet
'cause
is
the
what's
90s was
changing
just-
it.
It's ridiculous though, because the 90s was just 10 years ago, we all know. So
I got bad news for you, man.
I don't want to hear it.
Well, speaking of weapons from the 90s, we talked about, we're talking RPGs. I'd be remiss if I left Dragon Quest out. I do have to say, like, each of the game has like their, Sword of Light or Zenithian sword, which is pretty cool, but there's a couple that hold a special place for me. The Kautori sword, which is just a normal sword that, well, I guess it's a low-level flame sword, but you can get it early, and when you get it, it is like super powerful, and it lasts for a while before it loses its style. And there were just some tricks to get it early, especially in Dragon Quest IV, that I loved. But overall, I think the best weapons, though, is when you get the boomerang, like the whips and boomerangs in that game. What's special about them is usually in an RPG, when you attack, you only hit one enemy. But the boomerang will hit every enemy on the screen. It's like an area of effect attack, but it's just a normal weapon, which is just fantastic. So, and the boomerang, usually the main character, or if not the main character, someone you always want in your party.
Main character adjacent.
Yeah, main character adjacent, exactly. I find it interesting you picked Dragon Quest swords, but
I just looked up Dragon Quest Zenithian sword.
and they came up with Dragon Quest swords. I didn't realize that the Zenithian sword was in that game. It's funny, I have that game.
I don't know enough about Dragon Quest to know what I'm looking at, man.
This is the Dragon Quest Wiimote game.
Are you
Motion
serious?
control.
I
am
now
dead
see it.
serious.
I now see it.
I haven't actually played it, but I did lend it to someone who worked in my lab, actually, up at college, and he beat the game, even though I haven't played it yet. But
You're not a real Dragon Quest fan unless you've beaten Dragon Quest swords.
I don't think that's true, but it's hilarious.
It's my job to gatekeep the Dragon Quest fandom.
If you haven't played the Wii motion game, then you're not a true fan, huh?
Exactly,
Of an
yeah.
RPG series.
Is this the level of like you're not a real Legend of Zelda fan if you haven't played Link's Crossbow Training?
Well, darn straight, but that's just true,
That's exactly what this is. Well,
No,
or
you're
is
not
it,
the real
no,
Zelda. No,
unless you played the
Camelot.
CDI games.
By
Yeah.
Princess Picross.
Hey, don't knock Picross. I'm actually doing a nonogram right now as we speak.
Oh yeah, no, Picross is great. It's just a funny thing that they're just, hey, let's do Twilight Princess themed Picross, because that's a
Well, or
Something we can
saying
do.
you're not a real Metroid fan if you haven't played Freedom Force.
Oh gosh.
That's not a Metroid game.
One of the early weapons that actually stood out and actually had a meaning to me, though, was probably the Sword of Mana.
Oh yeah,
I'm assuming that's from
Secret,
yeah.
Secret of Mana. Yeah,
yeah, that's a good one too.
like it's the impetus for the whole game, and I just remember how that game really affected me when I was playing it. I was like, there's something different about this game, because it was really one of the first action RPGs that still played as an RPG with the level up system and everything that I played. like I'd played Zelda, but there was something different about like there was a lot more storyline in Secret of Mana. And you find out that like it's the impetus for the whole game, and so
Well, and as the Sword of Mana, like as you level it up, they kind of make it clear in the lore that all the swords of legend
are the Sword of Mana.
Are the Sword of Mana, because as you level it up, it goes through different, famous sword stages. Like, oh, I just leveled it up to the Excalibur, but I can level it up again. And I think Masamune is one of them, and it's every sword, which I think I've.
Well, and the same thing happened with all the other weapons too. They did.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of them that kind of stood out that way.
But yeah, I mean, that one was interesting because you only got one sword in the game. It just leveled up to all the other famous swords that you already knew of.
That is a unique thing I haven't seen in a lot of other games.
Okay, I've got another one that I know y'all will absolutely appreciate and have stories to tell about. The Home Run Bat. From the Super Smash Brothers series. Oh, the Home Run Bat. There are so many wonderful memories of that weapon.
Home Run Contest.
Oh, yeah. Though, I hope, well, one of them I feel like is a great memory for me, but a bad one for you, Baggins.
I probably don't remember it.
You were, it was the first, Y Smash League that I attended, and it was the one-on-ones, and you were winning that match. You were trouncing me, and then a home run bat dropped, and I got it, and
and you connected,
and I completely reversed it and destroyed you in turn. But yes, that is. But
it's
love
such
that.
a great weapon.
Gosh, but I have such a good memory.
Especially once you realize some of its best uses aren't actually swinging it,
but throwing it
was incredible.
Well, yeah, that's what I did. Is I just threw it at you.
I vaguely remember that now.
Well,
it's kind of too bad that they nerfed the throwing in Ultimate, but
yeah.
Well, it's because
man, in Melee, it was so good.
Well, because the thing that was interesting that a lot of people at first glance didn't quite understand that all the melee weapons, when you threw them, if they connected, they would hit you at slightly different angles.
Different angle, yep. Well, that's why my other one that I love from Smash is the fan.
The straight up. And which is interesting because the fan's no longer in the game.
Really?
Yeah, well, it's because there's a lot of degenerate stuff you could do with it.
Absolutely.
Because you could just
the stun lock,
stun lock someone
between the pure vertical throw and the chain stun. It was deemed unfun.
Which they're not wrong. For now that we're in an online environment, you need to start worried about things.
They took out the fan, but they kept the beetle.
See, the beetle you can get out of real easy. And the fact that you can everyone can reflect it with just a single hit, I think makes the beetle fair. Whereas the fan, it's don't get hit. If you get hit, you die.
Maybe the real offender is the Gus Bellows.
See, that's another one. I love the Gus Bellows. It just creates wacky scenarios that I love.
Talking wacky scenarios that I love the fireworks cannon.
The Cracker Barrel?
Cracker Barrel, that's what it's called.
And that's another one that hasn't made I should do a video on that. That wouldn't be bad. Anyway, it was just another one because just like in theory you can aim it. Almost no one ever does because you don't have a lot of time. You're very vulnerable when you have it. And so you just grab it and then you just spam it and it just turns into utter madness throughout the screen. No, Smash has some good ones in there, but yeah, once you figure out the weapons each have a different angle that they hit at, that it changes how you when you're going to use them.
Well, honestly, one of the ones that I feel is vastly underappreciated is in Brawl, Zero Suit Samus, the armor pieces.
You just start off with a bunch of items at your feet.
And just chuck them, and because they hit hard.
They hit freaking hard. Well, and especially with how Final Smashes work, it's like there was no reason if you're a Samus player to not start a Zero Suit.
Yeah.
But
I just preferred Zero Suit because
you see, and as a Samus player, I hated that my Final Smash was, "Hi, get a character you're not good at."
Oh, same here, but for the opposite reason.
Yeah, not the best design as far as balance goes, but you could say a lot of that stuff about Brawl.
Granted, I loved having the pieces of the suit though to throw at the beginning of the match. It's
a huge competitive advantage. There's a reason they took a second look at that and said, maybe this isn't the best design on our part.
And I said, "Aw."
I could never even figure out how to start a ZSS in.
I think you just held R,
place.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, you just held R.
Yeah, you held L or R, one of the two.
It was definitely R because my muscle memory is twitching right now.
Got it. Okay.
Love how that's true. No lies detected here. No, the other,
unless my muscle memory is lying to me, which is very possible. So
nah, it wouldn't do that to you.
It would.
Nah, not your muscle memory.
It's a jerk that way.
But no, the other one that was just as far as a weapon in Smash that was interesting was the squeaky hammer. The fact that it existed and it looked exactly the same as the golden hammer.
Oh, it was great.
It felt like every golden hammer was squeaky for a time. It was just like...
Well, no, it's only squeaky when you pick it up. When someone else picks it up, it's going to be fine. Because that's how weapons work.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
But no, I don't know, just the idea of it looks exactly the same. You have no way of detecting. Just roll the dice. 9 times out of 10, it's fine. And then there's the one time it's not, and you're just like, no.
Well,
Suddenly,
like in the original, the hammer and then the head would come off.
Yes.
And speaking of the head, when the head comes off and you're wielding the hammer, you can't do anything, and then they can pick up the head.
Yeah.
And that thing hit like a truck.
Yep.
It's just fun party game mechanics on that. Now, I want to go a slightly different route with the next one I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the World of Warcraft. And in their Legion expansion, every class got an artifact weapon.
Yeah.
Yep.
And for me, this was also when they completely redesigned Discipline Priest to become a class where you damage to heal, which is not something they had ever done in World of Warcraft. But the reason I bring up this weapon in particular isn't because of that feature, because they've kept that feature going forward. The reason is because this weapon had a special ability. It was called Light's Wrath, and it had a really cool look to it. It had like this, it's a staff, but it has like a stained glass look, which you're playing priest, that works well. But it had an ability called Light's Wrath. The way you healed is you would put a mark on someone that would make it so that all your damage that you do to other enemies would start to heal them. And you had abilities that let you put it on multiple people at the same time. Light's Wrath had this ability on like a 1.5 minute cooldown. So in terms of a RPG, really long cooldown in an MMO. And it was the name of the weapon. It's called Light's Wrath, and it would just be this big nuke, and how big the nuke was completely tied to how many times you've spread this mark throughout your party. So it heals better the more it damages more the more you're healing, which then does more healing. And so if you could spread your mark all over the place, you could get these insane damage numbers. Now it's only on one attack, and on raid bosses, that's just, it's a pittance compared to what the DPS are putting out, but it felt so good. But what pissed me off was in the next expansion, you no longer have this ability. It's like, well, that weapon's gone. You don't have it anymore. And it's like, well, you took other things that were weapon abilities and made it a class feature, and they've never given it back, and I've never forgiven them for it. It felt so good.
rough.
It was personal.
It was personal. I'm telling you, Blizzard did it to piss me off in particular.
Wait. So they took away the weapon from you, or did they just change how it worked?
They took away all of the weapons.
They
It's
took
a
away the
story.
weapon.
Did they take it away, or did they just overscale it?
They took it away. The overscaling was by design. Like they wanted it to be overscaled, and then at the end
remember,
of
like the Heart
the
of
end of-
Azeroth thing
yeah.
was like
at the
we're
end
gonna
of the
outscale it,
expansion,
like, useless.
the end of the expansion, you basically sacrificed all your weapons power to stop big bad thing coming. And
Different classes got different artifact weapons, but it got rid of whatever your artifact weapon
Yeah.
was at the end.
And it's like you still have the husk of it, but it doesn't have the power anymore. And it was just annoying because it was so cool. And then the next expansion, they're like, hey, here's a neck piece that'll level up with you. And it's like, no one gives a crap about neck pieces.
So
You can't even see them. It's like belts in FF14.
So is it when you finish that quest line, or
When you
is
finish
it
the
just
expansion.
Okay, so if you just purposely don't finish
No,
it,
because they're not going to let you have the overpowered thing in the next expansion. So if you don't do it, it's like, well, no, it's still nerfed to high heaven.
Still gone.
Because it's lore wise, it's gone. But it's just so annoying because you lost the abilities that came with it. It's like, let's say it's overtuned. Okay, scale it down. No. Why? Why can't I have the fun thing? Because we planned things out poorly. That's a bad excuse.
Something borrowed power.
That's too bad.
Yes, it is too bad, but they're paying the price for poor decisions, so in the end, justice will be served. I no longer have Light's Wrath, but my wrath is being quelled.
That's
But it was
too
really
bad.
cool, and I loved it. I loved Light's Wrath.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, it is. I think it's cool, and other people should get to play with it too, but you can't because, again, they didn't understand what they were doing.
Well, I mean, can you not make a new character and play that expansion, or is that not how it works?
No, because the problem is, because it was all designed with you getting super overpowered, the numbers that were in that expansion, even though we're several expansions beyond it now, we've never even sniffed the numbers that you were putting out in that expansion. And so they had to basically remove all the functionality because everyone was crazy go nuts. And characters from that expansion are, statistically speaking, more powerful than characters now.
Still?
Oh,
Yes,
wow.
still.
Wow. I mean, granted, that was also the expansion where they did the big level squish afterwards, right?
Yes, they had to. Well, the problem was, for example, Light's Wrath, if I spread it well enough, I was doing, the attack would hit for over 3 million damage. And at that point, do the numbers mean anything on the screen?
No, that's my problem with Diablo
Well, those are
3.
Well, those are
Numbers don't mean
Disgaea
anything.
numbers.
Yeah. And so
The numbers don't mean anything. It's the letter that means anything.
yeah, well,
No.
and so
I hate it.
the devs did point out, it's we have to do this because if we don't, we're going to have to start representing the numbers with scientific notation.
Well, I mean, I kind of, I mean,
It's already
I understand
already
their argument, but I kind of feel like you should still be able to play that quest line again.
You can play the
experience
quest
it.
line, it just doesn't have any of the power.
Well, does that make
came
it
with
impossible to beat the boss of
'cause
that
it's-
quest line?
It's
No, it's
squished
all been
down and
scaled.
stuff. But it's just,
Oh.
but you're not playing the same game because you don't have the same abilities because built around that. So you can never get that experience again.
That's a live
bummer.
service games.
Yeah, it's the problem of a live service game, and in particular, it's actually a really interesting game design problem that they ran into.
The reason why that's a big reason why I just don't want to get into like live services for that reason.
Well, so it's an interesting game design problem because when they first, because you gotta like think of WoW in its infancy. In its infancy, it's iterating on things like EverQuest, and which was very rudimentary. And they said, all right, what do we like about EverQuest? What do we not like? And they tried to iterate on that. And so then the next expansion comes out. They give each class a few more abilities, and they have new quest lines and new weapons, and everything scales up. And then they do it again for the next expansion, and then again for the next expansion. And they're now looking at things and they're like, holy crap, everyone has like a bazillion spells. They all do different things. They all have different utilities. And it's impossible to balance this game right now because everyone just has way too much stuff. So then in Cataclysm, there's like, okay, how do we solve this problem? And this is when they started changing some things where they pruned some people's abilities because they're like, guys, we can't balance the game. But they started introducing this idea of temporary power because they're like, oh, this is actually works really well because if it's contained to a single expansion, we can balance it for that expansion and then throw it away at the end of the expansion. And it feels really good as a game developer to not have to worry about your problems exponentially. It's sort of like Kirby, where every single time they add a character to Smash, it's like, oh, Kirby just got a little more complicated. Because Kirby just now gained a new ability. But the problem is it feels horrible.
It's a similar design standpoint to like how Magic the Gathering introduced different formats and like a rotating standard format where it's like, okay, we know that we can't print any cards without inevitably creating some sort of combo with a card we printed 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That like breaks the game. So we're going to have formats that rotate out cards that we don't have to maintain an insanely long ban list like Yu-Gi-Oh does. And so it's like, okay, you're creating an interesting competitive format year over year. That's good. You also are saying, hey, all you people that have invested time in your cards and decks and whatnot, we're going to say that those aren't going to be like eligible for play anymore. That's a problem. And so when you get into a situation where it's an MMO space, it's like, okay, it's not the money you spent, but it is the time and effort you've done. It's the game you love. And the game you love, when that is no longer playable, it's not like, oh, these cards have been banned, but you can still play kitchen table with them. It's like, no, this has been taken from you forever, and there's no way to get it back. It's kind of a problem for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's a problem.
It's just a design problem, and it's interesting to hear how people try and solve it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I want to talk about a different type of weapon that's cool for very different reasons that other than usefulness. The crowbar from Half-Life.
It's a classic. I mean, it's not like super special, but it is kind of fun and classic.
Well, it's classic because it really encapsulates the idea of you are just a guy who's been thrown into the situation, and so you're just using
like a PhD. Gordon, don't discount Gordon Freeman's PhD.
I'm not discounting it, but the point is he's just using what's around.
Yeah, he's just using what's around, though I do feel like what really cemented the crowbar into the lexicon of awesome weapons was how they treated it in Half-Life 2.
Yes, the sword of the free man.
The free man, and hands you, and tosses you the crowbar, and you're like, yes, I am back. It's a great moment. And I honestly think that without that moment, it wouldn't be nearly as iconic. I think they did a great job.
I would agree. That. I only played through the first Half-Life for the first time, like, just a couple months ago, maybe last year.
Really?
Yeah. Look, I I have some catching up to do on gaming.
No, it just surprises me because I would have thought just your age group that would have just naturally.
You would have thought, but it's just one of those games that I just kind of totally missed on.
Yeah, just no, that happens.
I mean, for me, it's like Half-Life's the games that I've played, and I did the multiplayer a lot with my friends, but I never actually like finished the campaigns. But
Yeah, I was never a person who played a lot of multiplayer games, and so I missed out on like Counter-Strike and everything, all that. But anyway, playing the first Half-Life, it's like, okay, you have the crowbar, and then literally after fighting, like, you get to the first guard, and then you get a pistol, and it's like, well, that, based on the legacy, I would have assumed, oh, yeah, you're stuck with a crowbar for like an hour plus. It's like, no, it's just the very initial escape. And you get a pistol right away, and it's like, sure, the ammo's not infinite, but it's not like it's non-existent. So maybe it is more of like the legacy that it earned through Half-Life 2 and beyond, more so than just in Half-Life 1.
No, well, and it was just so unique. Everyone else for their melee weapons, like Doom, it's the freaking chainsaw. It's things that are meant to be like they feel violent. But for Gordon, it's just a crowbar. And the other thing is that crowbar is actually a lightsaber on the very original patch of the game. Does anyone here know about this?
No.
It's an example of early game design where certain things were tied to clock speed.
Oh,
yeah.
And so if you had like the original beta version of Half-Life and you put it on a modern computer, what you actually had was a death field that just goes in front of you.
Yeah, there's so many old games that's like if you don't have a rate limiter on it.
Yep.
Because they didn't consider how fast computers would get.
Yep.
That top speed is uncapped.
That and the engines didn't have what they have now, where they have a delta when they call the tick to say this many seconds passed, so scale whatever calculation you're doing by this many seconds. How many, fractions of a second, but yeah.
The crowbar, though, is also one of those weapons that's like, it's almost been more famous in its continuing pop culture relevance by the fact that so many games and everything just like references, if not outright parodying it, but almost more so directly referencing it. Like there are so many games that I've played through that you open it up and like one of the first secrets you find is a crowbar that has some sort of reference to Freedom, Freeman, Gordon, GF, whatever.
Gordon Freeman.
Yeah.
But no, it's really good stuff in terms of just the cultural impact of the weapon, that's one of the other things that's just weird about gaming as it exists now, is that it's old enough where it has its own references and its own culture that you need to be paying homage to and respecting and thinking about. 'Cause didn't used to.
Well,
because we go back to our conversation about Sonic and just the way Sonic used to be versus how it is now is because Sonic now is a very different thing from Sonic then.
Yes.
And games aren't constantly referencing like movies or TV or whatnot like they were in, say, like Duke Nukem or something like that.
Or Gex. Yeah. Remember Gex?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Gex.
There are a few games that'll do that, but it's tapered off in the past 10 years or so.
Instead, we're just referencing older and older games.
Right. Yep. But like I remember, I guess it is games that they're referencing now, because like even with Guacamelee 2, there were memes all over the place. It was internet heavy.
Internet Heavy sounds like a band name. I just don't know what.
So
what music would Internet Heavy play?
So I actually posted one of the coolest weapons I could think of from video games. It's from Shinobi, the PS2 Shinobi. but it is a sword, a katana called the Akujiki, which it has the coolest concept. So it is a cursed. Oh, you have the sound go on there.
Don't worry about it.
No, that's the watch together. That's on my end. Hold on.
That is a long scarf, man.
Oh yeah, well the scarf in this game's amazing, but what's special about the sword is after like the first level or two, it awakens, and it's a cursed demon blade that craves souls. And so the mechanic of the game is that you constantly have to be killing something or else it's draining your health because it must be fed.
It sounds like something that Brandon Sanderson ended up doing.
Yeah, and it is so cool. So as you kill enemies, they get frozen in space because there's like a timer that starts, and if you chain kills together, every time you kill one and there's more on the screen, the power of the sword increases exponentially. And so as you kill the first one, the next time you hit it's going to do twice damage, and then twice and twice. And just about every boss, there's a setup to where you can hit 8 mooks that it drops. And then if you get all of the 8 mooks hit and then hit the boss, you can one-shot the boss. And it's kind of like a special way to get like a high score on the boss. But it is just so fun and satisfying. And when the group is completely all dead, the camera kind of like shifts and freezes. And that's when all the enemies have their, anime style cut in half and then fall into 2 pieces all at the same time. It was so cinematic. It was ridiculous. It was over the top. It's why the game was rated M, and it was so fun, especially with following that scarf around. I don't know if they meant to originally design the scarf like that or if it was a bug that they decided was awesome and leave it as is.
That definitely, as I look at it, that definitely does have the feeling of unintentional, let's roll with it.
I mean, I really think that is highly likely what happened with the creation of that scarf, but man, it is just so iconic to dash around with that and then have a bunch of enemies that, you've killed with the sword. But, like, I also like how it just kind of gives you that urgency to not, not hang around. You got to get moving or else the sword will start draining your health. And
it's definitely unique.
So I don't know. This game is amazing and it's hard and this was one of the best PS2 games out there. Really, when it came to action. I don't know. Has anyone else played Shinobi?
I have not.
I played it back when it first came out. Like I rented it and enjoyed it. I remember, but I didn't get super deep.
Oh yeah, and then the climbing on the walls. Yeah, this whole game was just great. Mm-hmm. Its sequel, well, they tried to make it, bigger and better and more things to do, but they just made it more complicated when the fun simplicity was what made the first game work so well.
Hate that so many games fall into that trap. Let's make it more complex. That'll be better, right?
Because they wanted to add, she can kick instead of just slashing the sword, and these enemies you have to kick to break their guard, and I don't know, it didn't quite work as well, but I think she still had the Akujiki, so you still had to continually attack.
So they at least still had the thing that you enjoyed it for.
Yes. I beat this game. I did not beat its sequel, though. Which, it's funny, the sequel was Koinichi, but because Americans don't know that term back then, they named it Nightshade for whatever reason.
That's an interesting...
It's a choice.
Because all I know is I'm like, why is it called Nightshade? And, the older I got, I'm like, why didn't they call it Koinichi? And I look up, it was called Koinichi in Japan. Okay.
They just decided Americans are too dumb.
But that sword, the concept of it eats souls, so you have to constantly be moving, constantly be attacking, and it powers up the quicker you are at making kills, the more powerful it is, and how you could use that to your advantage, and that's not just to your advantage, but as a strategy in the boss fights. It's just fantastic.
All right. I have one more I want to do. We've been going for a while. Does anyone, before I go to my last thing, have anything they want to do?
I have one.
Okay.
I have one. So another game that kind of like came and went, like undiscovered cult classic for a lot of people, but I've had it growing up and played it. Has anyone heard of Metal Arms?
I know of it. I don't really know it, though.
Okay, so Metal Arms, a glitch in the system. It is a third-person shooter where everything is robots. So you're a robot, all your enemies are different types of robots. They have some pretty cool weapon designs in there that really interact with the fact that because everything's a robot, they took advantage of the fact that you can like cut off limbs at the joints and whatnot that are like, ball bearing joints.
Saturday morning cartoon rules.
A little bit, yeah. And so you have certain things like you have guns that shoot saw blades that specifically just like dislocate things. Like for instance, you have a Ripper saw blade that you can shoot against. There's a certain type of enemy that has like a shoulder mounted rocket launcher. But if you hit it with the saw blade, it'll just kind of be loosely dangling, and so every time it tries to fire, it just shoots itself in the foot.
Okay, that's pretty clever, actually.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of really clever weapon use, and one of the more clever weapons that they had is something called the control tether, where it's a weapon that allows you to fully take control of an enemy. And it'll actually dismantle you once you can take control of them, so you can't like be hunted down and hurt while you're controlling the enemy. And then when the enemy dies, you just put yourself back together, get back up, and you're fine. So there's no like cost associated to it, aside from the fact that you have to stay behind the enemy where their control port is for long enough for it to like charge and lock on. And if they turn around, or if you aren't targeting for long enough consistently, you don't get the control off. And then you have different upgrades to each weapon where you can upgrade and say, hey, up to level 3, where it's not instantaneous, but very, very quick compared to level 1, which is like, takes like 5 seconds. It's super slow. But it creates some very interesting situations where it's like, okay, you have several missions where it's literally, you're put down here, and the easiest way to get through is to control this enemy, have them go, attack, like basically get blown up, lure someone else in so you can sneak around them, control them. Now you have the big robot that then you can clear out this whole entryway. Or you can go in guns blazing with, your own rocket launchers and, shotguns and whatnot types of weapons you have. So the systems they had provided some very interesting and dynamic options for you, but that control tether is something that really, I'm trying to remember if games like Dishonored had similar things, like if they had like a mind controller. I don't think Dishonored did, but I feel like it's more of like a stealth game weapon than like a combat game weapon. But this was a full third-person shooter combat action game, so
yeah, that's one that I've seen things like that. I just can't think of ones that I've played that were like that.
Yeah. And Metal Arms itself is one of those tragic cases of they set up a really cool universe. They had this great game, great IP, but it just bombed or didn't do as well as they wanted it to. And so the whole thing ended up getting canned. The studio got eaten up by EA, and now the IP is in permanent purgatory.
EA purgatory is the worst purgatory.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Looney, do you have any other weapons you want to bring up?
Sure. I would like to mention the fusion sword from Brave Fencer Musashi, where that's
I am
the
not
one
familiar with this game.
I'm
You've
sure
mentioned it before.
Yeah, I've brought it up to you before.
Yeah.
He's mentioned it on the podcast before.
Yeah,
he?
I've mentioned it on
Man.
the podcast.
Oh, wait, this is oh gosh, no, now that you say that name, now I'm starting to...
All-you-can-eat kingdom.
Yes, that's what it is.
The thirst quencher
That's
empire.
that's what it... my brain did not remember I remember the all you could eat kingdom. I don't remember the name of the game.
But yeah, so the two weapons you have in there, you have one giant broadsword that's Lumina, and you have a much smaller, it's not a katana, it's more of a wakizashi called the Fusion Blade. And, one hits hard because it's huge, but it's slow, but the faster one, but the special ability is the Fusion is you charge up an attack, and then he throws it out, and it flies out forward, and when it stabs an enemy, it sticks into them, and then you tap the button, and it sucks out their essence, and then flies back to you, and you gain a special power. Like, that's how you gain, like, special abilities. They're temporary abilities, because you can only have one equipped at a time. But yeah, you throw it out, it hits them, and then you fuse with their power, and gives you a power-up. So it's a weapon that you use to absorb enemies' power-ups. And that, as well as just being your basic quick attack that you use more so than the giant sword. But yeah, the fact that you could basically throw out this wakizashi like a spear that returns magically but sucks out enemy and then can be swung like a sword. It's a great weapon.
Man, the more you tell me about this fever dream of a game, the more I'm interested in it.
Oh, it's a great game, man.
I can't wait to forget the name of it again for you to then bring up something else and then me be like, what's that? And then you're going to have to tell me fast food game. And I'm like, oh, right.
Well, let me guess, you're going to talk about, like, amazing songs and soundtracks. It's like, oh, yeah, there's this one song from Brave Fencer Musashi that I had to learn how to play on the saxophone because it was just that good. But, yeah.
Never heard of this game. What is this?
Oh, man. But seriously, if you're gonna look up old PS1 classics, Brave Fencer Musashi is a must-play.
All right, and then Baggins, do you have any last ones?
I've got 1.5. Essentially.
Okay.
One of them's just like there's two of them. One of them's much smaller.
Okay.
And it's not really the weapon itself. It's just kind of what it represented when it came out. And that was, did any of y'all ever play Rise of the Triad?
I have not.
Yes.
Okay, so that was it was an early FPS, single player.
It was it was a Doom-like game was the time.
It was. But the thing that really I remember being kind of blown away was not the pistol, but if you picked up a second pistol, you could dual wield. This was one of the very, very first times, if not the first time, an FPS let you dual wield weapons. And all it was just like technically wasn't you dual wielding weapons. It's just another weapon that fired twice as fast and had a special animation. You know.
But the important thing is it feels like two weapons at once.
But the other thing that I remember standing out, and it's one of those things. It stood out to me as interesting at the time, but I didn't understand why, was there were a bunch of cheat codes that you could type in for playing Rise of the Triad, and the one to get the dual wielding weapon was John Woo. And I was like, who?
Back to our conversation about them referencing movies.
And I was like, who is John Woo? Since then I've learned a lot more about him. But
were there a lot of doves? Did doves appear as well?
No, but the other thing that really stood out to me about the game was you could bullet holes would show up in the wall, and so you could technically like write your name in bullet holes. And I was just like,
totally did that in GoldenEye.
This is the most edgy game in the world. But yeah,
this is what adulthood looks like.
So that's the half. But I feel like we can't end this discussion. Particularly with breakfast watching, without bringing up the Mega Buster and its many iterations.
That was another one I wanted to talk about.
My personal favorite iteration is actually the X Buster and X2, or is it the Z Buster? I don't remember which one it is at that point in that one, but the highest upgrade in that one, because it was a 1-2 punch, which just was like, okay, this is interesting. You charge up, you fire, and then you fire a second shot, and when the two shots hit, it's a bigger shot.
Well, that and oh my goodness, I mean, I just love the first time you get in the first one because you haven't seen anything quite like it. I mean, sure, some of the earlier Mega Mans had a weapon that you could charge up, but like the Mega Buster, where it's like this giant, like spinning, twirling cloud of death in front of you. It's just so wonderful.
I do remember because it was Mega Man 3 where you first get the chargeable Mega Buster, right? And I remember playing it at the time and being
well, two the heat gun was chargeable.
Yeah,
but that's not the Mega Buster. That's the heat gun.
No, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the first one. Breakfast will let us know.
Breakfast said 4 in chat.
Okay, I thought it was 4.
So three is where you could slide. I think is what I remember.
Yeah, 3 could slide.
And also the introduction of Rush, if I remember right. But I just
3 was Rush as well.
I just remember though, like being able to charge up was really cool. But in X2, I remember charging up and letting loose the major blast, and then setting out a second shot, and then creating that wall of plasma.
Wall of plasma is just a satisfying thing to say.
Yeah, I do love the Mega Man X Mega Busters so much. And the fact that they allowed you to charge all your weapons, not just the one.
That's another one of those, amazing. I look at it game design wise, I can't believe that they let you do that.
Breakfast is correcting me. The double charge, like you get the double shot in X2, but it's not until X3 that you get the double charge. So it's been forever. Okay, sorry, I'm not a Mega Man aficionado like you are.
I'm gonna need you to get all the way off my back about the double buster.
Jeez, y'all getting so much wrong?
Don't worry about it. Don't feed them.
Breakfast being a little dramatic there.
No, anyway. So okay, my final. I'm gonna do 1.5 like Baggins did. He just reminded me I want to do something.
I feel like it'd be remiss to leave out the Vampire Killer in this discussion, but we're running so low on time.
Yeah. So Frontier Justice in TF2, where it suddenly encouraged a much more risky style of gameplay for an engineer, because every single time your gun got a kill, you get mini crits, but you don't get rewarded the mini crits until your sentry gun dies. So you're encouraged to throw out a turret that will get a couple kills, but you don't want it to be too entrenched a position, because then you'll never get your kills, your little mini crits. And so it encouraged you to play with the mini turret, which I loved doing. But the thing I want to end on here, I want to end on Hades and my favorite weapon in Hades. Hades is just the shield. I love the shield. Now, the thing is, when I first started playing, I learned the glory of the shield. For those, if you never played Hades, you need to play Hades. One of the best games ever.
I love the gloves, but man, the shield is just so wonderful.
My gloves are my favorite.
The thing I want to focus on here, this screen. So the reason I liked the shield is because what I would love to do is I'd love to get the boons from Ares, which Ares gives you a thing where every single time you hit with your special, which is the shield bouncing Captain America style off a bunch of enemies, it'll apply Doom. What does Doom do? Doom, after a couple seconds, basically just drops like the Sword of Damocles and deals a bunch of damage to an opponent. So I developed what I called the Brain Dead build, where you just spam special and run away from the enemies. Because
it's great. It works every time.
Yeah. Until you start trying to get to higher heat levels. Heat is something where you basically make the game harder for yourself, and it's purely optional. You don't have to do it, but there are 3 statues that sort of represent different heat levels that if you can clear the game on them, you unlock them. And I thought I wanted to get full 32 heat, and I tried it and I just never could do it with the Brain Dead build. Okay, whatever. Then Carl Jobst put out a video talking about how full heat's probably impossible. And it was just a video breaking down the idea of filling out 64 heat, which is the screen you see here. And basically, defeating the game on full heat was mathematically almost impossible. The only way you could do it is if you got a very specific build with a very specific shield. Now, this shield, you throw it out, and it goes into this spinning motion. When you hit special again, it'll slowly return to you. But every time it spins, it does a second, it just does a tick of damage. Which means if you get something like Zeus's Boon, which every single time it hits for damage, it'll drop a lightning bolt. As you can see here, it'll do a lot of damage. And basically, you'd have to play the game in such a way where you get that exact boon with this exact other thing, and you might be able to beat it. So he puts out the video. A couple days later, some mad lad who's one of these speedrunners saw his video and said, so it is mathematically possible. You just need a very specific build and perfect execution. And he beat it on 64 heat. And because this man beat it on 64 heat and I saw this video, I suddenly realized it is possible for me to get to 32 heat, which is the final thing the game really even remotely asks you to do. And I'm like, but I hate using the shield. I'm not good at doing it. And then I just heard that little gamer voice in my head that said, then get good. And so I got good. And I am proud to say, using the build that you are seeing before you, I was able to defeat 32 heat. It's one of the best gaming achievements I've ever done. And it's all thanks to this shield.
You recorded it?
Not recorded it, but This isn't my build. This is the guy. This is the guy who beat it on 64 heat, which is full heat, and I still can't believe it is actually possible, just because of all the things it does.
I know they keep saying that that's the best build in the game, the best shield, but I'm like, it's not as fun as it fully captaining America.
I will say, once you start to get into the flow of this build, it starts becoming fun, because part of it is you'll notice as he throws out the shield, you can keep swinging. So basically, when you throw the shield out, you still have a phantom shield in your arm. So you can kind of attack in two places at the same time. And so it becomes a goal of sort of throwing it out a little bit, getting a couple swipes in, then making it return to you, because you also get explosive return, where every single time you catch the shield, you deal 50 damage. And you find the fun if you start to play with it. But I was the exact same way. But because I wanted that 32 heat, I finally just said to myself, okay, time to get good. And I did, and I've beaten the game on 32 heat, and I have the statue to prove it on my save file.
Nice.
I love how even on a 64 heat run, still gives the whatever to Boldy.
Well, yeah. Well, because that's actually strategic. You get a 1% increase in your stats if you do that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
It's tiny, but when you're on 64 heat, you need every single every single little thing you can get. And so,
wait, you can give nectar to him? I thought there was a limit where they wouldn't take it anymore.
No, not to Sisyphus, to Boldy, the boulder.
So you can always give to Boldy.
Yes, you can always give to Boldy.
Interesting.
Yeah, right. Kind of weird decision, but yeah. They understand the importance of like the pet the dog moments you can have in these games.
Yes.
Or in this case, pet the rock.
Yes, the giant Sisyphean rock, literally.
Yep. But yeah, good weapons are just awesome in video games, and it can either be because of the legend that builds around it, it could be because of the gameplay, it could be just because of the movement it gives, it could just be because the weapon just looks dang cool and feels really good. But video games, weapons, use them. They're important. All right.
I can't believe neither Mithril nor I brought up any of the relic weapons from FF14.
Okay, so real quick on that, they don't really deserve to be brought up. They're cool flexes. They're a long grind, but I don't know. I just don't see equipment in FF14 as being mechanically interesting.
The relic weapons, I feel like there is just something very interesting about them because it is such a big grind.
The journey to get them does make them feel more special and important, but
when you finish it, you feel like you've accomplished something, you've earned something, and then you stick it on a retainer and never look at it again. Or in your what's it called? Your
glamour dresser.
Glamour dresser, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a shame.
And I'm also sad that we weren't able to talk about any of the Castlevania weapons. Because there's lore in the classic ones, and then in the Metroidvania ones, there's just such a good amount of variety.
Yeah, there's another episode in this that we can come back to.
Yeah,
even some more people are able to show up and not get bullied by life.
Curse you, life. No bully. All right. A lot of us do stuff outside of this that we want to promote. Anything, Lunasar?
I'll promote Lizzie's stream, especially since I didn't have a chance to last time being asked first. And I feel
if it's dirty of us,
marital obligation to do so.
only the penitent man shall pass.
Only the penitent man shall pass. That is correct.
I love that happened last time. Mithril, do you want to promote anything?
Sure. Everyone knows I do Fire Emblem content. Really great stuff. If you want some classic style remixes of popular songs in the old school RuneScape sound font, darn it, I had it here. There we go. Unpragmatic or unpretentious? Unpragmatic covers RuneScape sound fonts versions of all sorts of songs. Stuff like the Imperial March of Star Wars, songs from like 3 Days Grace and Foo Fighters, songs like the Halo theme, just all sorts of things.
In the specific RuneScape sound font. Okay.
It's great.
That's a perfect name for that channel. That's good. All right. Baggins, do you want to promote anything?
Since it's kind of my last opportunity, I'll promote one of my other podcasts, The Innkeeper's Table. My co-host and I recorded our last episode last night, and it was just sort of a retrospective on the show itself and experiences we've had, what we've learned, all kind of stuff. It turned out to be a really cool discussion. So go check that out. That's again called The Innkeeper's Table. It's normally about board games, and we have a good backlog in there. So definitely go check it out. The episodes are 10 to 20 minutes long, so it's pretty bite-sized.
And I think pretty good content. All right, and then
one episode where we had this guest host.
Yeah, some butthead. Anyway, no. So for myself, Splice stream on Kick and Twitch and YouTube. I am going to be hosting my first Amiibo tournament in a while next week. So if that's something you're interested in, you should join in. Just go to submissionapp.com, and that's where you submit your Amiibo. Anyway, that's going to be a different thing. Maybe they'll submit a Simon with a whip to make Lunasar happy.
Indeed.
Well, guys,